Jeong-In, born on June 10, 2019, in Seoul, South Korea, tragically passed away on October 13, 2020, at just 16 months old after enduring 8 months of abuse and torture by her adoptive parents. Her full name was Yeolha. Her adoptive mother, Hayeong, faced charges of murder and child abuse, while her adoptive father, Sungeun, was charged with child abuse and neglect. Jang was sentenced to life imprisonment on May 14, 2021, while An received a 5-year prison sentence. The death of Jeong-In caused widespread outrage both nationally and internationally. Many criticized the police for not pressing charges against the adoptive parents despite receiving multiple reports of child abuse from Jeong-In's daycare teachers, a family friend, and a pediatrician. The pediatrician had noted bruises and significant weight loss on Jeong-In, indicating signs of abuse and malnutrition. Holt International Children's Services also failed to follow up after being informed of the abuse. Jeong-In came into the world on June 10, 2019, as a full-term healthy baby girl weighing 3.43 kilograms, 7 pounds 9 ounces. Her birth mother was unable to care for her, so she was placed in the care of a church when she was only 8 days old. After spending 8 months in a foster home, Jeong-In was eventually adopted. Her foster mom described her as a joyful and content baby who adored music and had a constant smile on her face. With a 4-year-old biological daughter already in their family, they were eager to welcome a baby sister for her. After successfully passing the adoption screening process, including the psychological test, Jeong-In moved in with them in February 2020. It was a joyous occasion when she officially became a part of Jang and An's family, weighing a healthy 8.5 kilograms, 19 pounds. During the 8 months that Jeong-In lived with Jang Hayeong and An Sungeun in the same household, she endured unimaginable abuse and torture. They subjected her to regular beatings, resulting in multiple bone fractures, and even withheld food from her because they disliked the smell of her feces. To make matters worse, they served her scalding hot food straight from the microwave, causing painful blisters and wounds in her mouth. Jeong-In's adoptive parents would often leave her alone at home for hours on end, sometimes up to 3 hours a day, and this happened at least 15 times during the 2 months she was absent from daycare, July to September 2020. As if that wasn't enough, they would lock her in a dark room every evening after 7 p.m. Whenever Jeong-In cried, Jang and An would slap her and tear at her mouth. They even went as far as tipping over her stroller while she was inside, just to frighten her. They intentionally tripped her while she was walking and found it amusing. In a truly horrifying act, they left her unsupervised by the swimming pool for an entire day. And if that wasn't enough, they would hang her up by her arms and hit her armpit area, knowing it was an extremely sensitive spot that would cause immense pain. 2 months after the adoption, the daycare teachers started to observe unusual bruises on Jeong-In's face and ears. When they found more bruises on her thighs, abdomen, neck, and collarbone fractures, the teachers reported a suspected child abuse case to the police on May 25, 2020. The police and the Child Protection Institution started to investigate but closed the case with the conclusion that no apparent abuse founded. On June 29, 2020, a family friend of Jang saw Jeong-In was left alone in Jang's car for over an hour on a hot summer day and reported it to the police. The investigation was not initiated by the police until 1 month later, and therefore all CCTV footage from the street had been erased, so the case was closed again. Jeong-In was absent from her daycare for 2 months from July 2020 to September 2020, but when she returned to the daycare in September, the teachers were shocked to see her condition. Jeong-In had lost a significant amount of weight and was covered in bruises all over her body. The teachers immediately took her to a clinic where the pediatrician examined Jeong-In and reported to the police that Jeong-In was suffering from malnutrition and obvious child abuse. The pediatrician strongly advised the police to immediately separate Jeong-In from her parents. However, the police and Child Protection Institution took Jeong-In to another clinic where her adoptive parents had a relationship with the doctor, and as such, the doctor diagnosed Jeong-In with a mouth infection. Hence the case was closed again and Jeong-In was sent back home to her abusive parents. 20 days after the third case was closed, Jeong-In died. On October 12, 2020, Jeong-In was sent to daycare in serious condition. According to the daycare teachers, she couldn't walk, stand, drink or eat all day. Her stomach seemed swollen, but she didn't fuss or cry at all. Her diaper was also dry for hours without any urine passing. The teachers called her adoptive mother, and she came to check Jeong-In's condition for a few minutes, but then left, saying there was nothing to worry about. However, Jeong-In had no energy and seemed very weak. After being dehydrated, she took a few sips of milk that the teacher tried to give her, but she immediately panted after drinking the liquid, and her body began to shiver. When her adoptive father picked her up in the afternoon, the teacher expressed her concern about Jeong-In's health, and how she didn't walk all day. At that moment, her adoptive father forced Jeong-In to take a few steps towards him, trying to prove that she was fine. The teachers asked the adoptive father to take Jeong-In to the hospital immediately, but he decided not to. The next day on October 13, 2020, Jeong-In's adoptive mother recorded with her phone to force Jeong-In to walk between 8:46 a.m. and 9:01 a.m. In the video, Jeong-In seemed to be in severe pain, constantly crying, but her adoptive mother was yelling and screaming at Jeong-In, demanding that she walk. At around 9:40 a.m., the neighbors downstairs heard some extremely loud noises from above, as if dumbbells were falling on the ground about 4 to 5 times. The neighbor went upstairs to check if everything was fine, but only Jang answered the door while her biological daughter peeked out. Jang apologized for the noise and said everything was all right. Then Jang called the daycare, stating that Jeong-In would be absent from daycare on that day. Around 10:19 a.m., she took her biological daughter to the daycare, and then to a lingerie store on the way home. In the surveillance footage, Jeong-In was not with her adoptive mother, and so she was alone at home again. Once returning home, Jang finally called a taxi to bring Jeong-In to the hospital. The taxi driver saw that Jeong-In was turning blue and unconscious, so he asked Jang to call the ambulance instead, but she refused. After several rounds of cardiac arrest and resuscitation in the ER, Jeong-In died on October 13, 2020, at the age of 16 months. While Jeong-In was fighting for her life in the ER, her adoptive mother was perusing online shopping malls and looking for a fish cake to buy outside of the emergency room. During the trial, the autopsy was performed, and the doctor testified that Jeong-In's case was the worst child abuse case he had ever seen in his 20 years of experience. Out of the 3,800 bodies he'd examined, from a pediatric perspective, Jeong-In had the worst injuries and her entire body was severely damaged. He had never seen a ruptured pancreas in a pediatric case, and he concluded that Jeong-In was probably stomped on multiple times on her stomach by adults. Only extremely strong force applied to her abdomen would cause such rupture of her internal organs. Additionally, based on some recovered tissue found in Jeong-In's organs, the doctors also believed that there was another severe beating that happened 3 to 5 days prior to her death. Jeong-In spent the last few days of her life in extreme pain, with even breathing being painful, which explained why she did not cry in the daycare where she was last seen alive.